The first commandment. If with pleasure you are viewing anything a man is doing, if you prize him, if you love him, tell him now. Don't withhold your approbation until the parson makes oration and he lies with many lilies on his brow. For no matter how you shout it, he won't really know about it, he won't count the many teardrops that you shed. If you think some praise is due him, now's the time to pass it to him. For he cannot read his tombstone when he's dead. What shall I do to be saved? Asked the rich young man of Jesus 1900 years ago. And today most of us are asking essentially the same question: what shall I do to be saved from poverty and sickness and unhappiness, here and now as well as in the hereafter? Keep the commandments, was the master's answer to the rich man. And later, when asked what is the greatest commandment, he told his hearers, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and great commandment. And the second is like unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Sounds simple enough, but just what is loving God? Is it going to church and being a professed Christian? Or is it simply being thankful and happy? Going to church and being an example to your neighbors is excellent, but is there any way in which you can show your love for God better than by being happy? Happiness implies praise, satisfaction with what God has done, and thankfulness for His good gifts. Happiness means that you are enjoying life, appreciating it to the full, and radiating joy to all about. And loving your neighbor is just making him happy, too, praising him and blessing him and doing what you can to help him. Can you think of any commandment, any law, that would do as much towards universal peace, towards settling the strife between labor and capital, towards bringing the millennium, as these two? 1. Be thankful and happy yourself. 2. Try to make your neighbor happy. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Someone has wisely said that the first step towards universal peace is to have peace in our own hearts, to wish our neighbors well, to bless and praise even those who have used us despitefully. Evelyn Gage Brown expressed the thought when she wrote, This old world needs the tender touch, the kindly word, the lifting hand, the love that blesses us so much, and friendly hearts that understand. It is said that a woman once went to Krishna and asked him how to find the love of God. Who do you love most? He inquired. My brother's child, she answered. Go back and love him more, advised Krishna. She did so, and lo! Behind the boy, she saw the form of the Christ child. The same thought is expressed in the old legend of the group that went out to find the Christ child. There were knights and great ladies and monks and clergymen and all manner of people, and among the latter was a kindly old shoemaker. Everyone laughed at the idea of his going out when so many of the great ones of the earth were ahead of him. But after they had all come back disappointed, the bent little shoemaker walked joyfully in, accompanied by the Christ child himself. Where did you find him? They asked. And the Christ child answered for him, I hid myself in common things. You failed to find me because you did not look with the eyes of love. Millions of books have been written about love, but most of them know not even the meaning of the word. To them, love is passion and self-gratification. Real love is not that. Real love is giving. It seeks only the good of the loved one. Yet in giving love freely, you get it, for it is like energy in that it expands only as it is released. It is like a seed in that it multiplies only when you sow it. As Ella Wheeler Wilcox put it, give love, and love to your heart will flow, strength in your utmost need, have faith and a score of hearts will show their faith in your word and deed. Carlyle defined wealth as the number of things a man loves and blesses, which he is loved and blessed by. Who are the unhappiest creatures on earth? Not the poor or the sick, but those who keep all their love for themselves. They may be worth millions, and they may have dozens of servants to attend to their every want, but they are bored to extinction. They are miserable. Why? Because they have stopped giving, and as the words of a beautiful hymn express it, for we must share, if we would keep that blessing from above. Ceasing to give, we cease to have. Such is the law of love. Life is expansion, mentally and physically. When you stop growing, you die. That is literally true in the case of your body cells, and figuratively true mentally, for when you cease to progress mentally, you are as good as dead. The undertaker may not call for a year or two, but so far as useful purposes are concerned, you might as well be buried. And just as life is action, so is happiness service. For in helping and praising others and making them happy, you win happiness for yourself. Charles Kingsley once said that we know our relations to God only through our relations with each other. No man can love God while he hates his neighbor. No man can love God while he is himself unhappy or deliberately makes another unhappy. To be unhappy implies criticism of God. An unhappy man cannot be grateful, he cannot be trustful, he cannot be at peace, and without these, how can he love God? Yet if he lives only for himself, he is bound to be unhappy. For whosoever shall save his life shall lose it, said the Master. But whosoever shall lose his life for my sake, the same shall save it. He who loses himself in the service of others shall find therein life and love and happiness. Longfellow tells of sending first an arrow into the air and then a song, and seems to lose them. But presently he found the arrow in an oak tree, and the song, from beginning to end, he found in the heart of a friend. He prayeth well, wrote Coleridge, who loveth well both man and bird and beast. He prayeth best, who loveth best all things both great and small, for the dear God who loveth us, he made and loveth all. When Jane Addams graduated from college, the doctors told her she had only 6 months to live. If a doctor told you that, what would you do? Most of us would simply sit down and die, and feel very sorry for ourselves in the doing of it. Not so Jane Addams. If I have only 6 months to live, she said, I'll use those 6 months to do just as much as I can of the things I want most to do for humanity. And she so lost herself in the work that she forgot to die. 8 years after the time predicted for her demise, she started Hull House, the Chicago settlement that is known the world over. Not only that, but her health was as good or better than that of the doctors who had prophesied her end. Everyone has heard of Luther Burbank and of the marvelous success he had in growing things. He could take even a prickly cactus plant and from its shoots grow a plant without thorns or prickers, from which cattle could get sustenance on even the driest soil. How did he work such wonders with all manner of growing things? Through the magic of love. He blessed each little plant, he praised and nursed and loved it. And the life in it responded by giving him such results as no man before him had ever dreamed of. Here is the message that Luther Burbank sent to his friends on his last birthday. As you hold loving thoughts toward every person and animal and even toward plants, stars, oceans, rivers and hills, and as you are helpful and of service to the world, so you will find yourself growing more happy each day, and with the happiness comes health and everything you want. Love and you shall be loved, said Emerson. Love is mathematically just, as much as the two sides of an algebraic equation. The old philosopher who said take out of life anything you want and pay for it stated an eternal truth. You get as you give. It is well to remind oneself of this frequently by repeating now and then when inclined to be disturbed by seeming difficulties. I so love that I see all good and give all good, and all good comes back to me. The most universal desire in all the world is man's natural desire for happiness. It is the purpose of existence. It is God's plan to make man win happiness through struggle and service, through adding to the happiness of others. Why is it that a moving picture actor makes 1,000 times as much as a teacher, as an average businessman or even a clergyman? Because he makes many 1,000 times as many people happy. He enables them to forget their troubles, to live their ideals, and their dreams, through his picturing of them. When the rest of us find some way to make as many people happy, we shall share in like rewards. A long time ago, Emerson wrote, he who addresses himself to modes and wants that can be dispensed with, builds his house off the road. But he who addresses himself to problems every man must come to solve builds his house on the road, and every man must come to it. Just ask yourself, what have I to give that will add to the happiness of those around me? You will be surprised how many simple little ways of brightening the lives of others will present themselves, and how great the reward these ways can bring, when multiplied by hundreds or thousands. A man down in Washington was too poor to buy his child toys, yet he wanted above everything to make that child happy. So with his pocket knife, he carved out of discarded pieces of lumber a rough sort of kiddie car. It made such a hit, not only with his own youngster but with every child around, that he took it to a manufacturer and made a fortune out of it. Years ago, a young veterinarian over in England had a mother who was confined to a wheelchair. To soften the jolts for her, he fastened a strip of rubber around the iron tires. Those strips of rubber, through constant improvement, developed into the famous Dunlop tire, which have been sold by the millions. There are similar stories to be found by the hundred. The only limit to your opportunities is the limit of human happiness. And that has not yet been reached. My husband died a short time ago, writes a poor, harassed widow, leaving his estate so involved that it looks as though we shall lose everything. What can I do? I have 2 young children to clothe and feed and educate, and I've never made a penny in my life. Tell me, is it wrong to pray for death, for I don't know what else we can do. Is it wrong to pray for death? What do you think? Is praying for death showing love for God and confidence in Him? What did the prophet of old in a similar case? My husband is dead, wailed the widow to Elisha, and the creditor is come to take unto him my 2 sons to be bondmen. Did Elisha demand that God rain down gold upon her? On the contrary, he asked what she had in the house, and with it, he helped her to win her own salvation. Read the story of Mary Elizabeth, and you will find an almost exact parallel. A widow with 3 children, no money, and the creditor poverty demanding those children for bondservants. But the oldest of them asked herself, "What have we in the house?" and found an ability to make others happy through delicious candy. Today the whole family is independently wealthy. You have no talent? Say not so. A weaker brother you can lift and by your strength help him to go renewed and blessed. This is your gift. No talent? Someone needs a word of courage, kindness, love, and cheer which only you can speak to gird his spirit against grief and fear. Yours is a special gift that none but you can use. Oh, lift your heart. So much good will be undone unless you do your own great part. You are God's helper day by day. He comforts, guides, and speaks through you. He needs just you in this best way. No talent? Oh, that is not true. Evelyn Gage Brown. The ancient Greeks had a legend that all things were created by love. Everyone was happy, because love was everywhere, and each vied with the other to make those around him happy. Then one night while love slept, fear crept in, and with it came disease and lack and all unhappiness. For where love attracts, fear repels. Where love gives freely, fear is afraid there will not be enough for all, so holds on to everything it has. What was the knowledge of good and evil against which God warned Adam in the garden? Wasn't it knowledge of things to fear? In the 2nd chapter of Genesis, we are told that Adam and Eve were naked and were not ashamed. Why? Because they knew no evil, therefore they feared no evil. But they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. They learned about evil. They hid themselves in the garden in fear of evil. And immediately evil things began to happen to them, and have continued happening to their descendants ever since. In the Garden of Eden, everything was abundance. The earth gave of its fruit bountifully. Then man learned to fear. And having been given dominion over the earth, his fear reacted upon it. He feared it would hold back its fruits. He feared there would not be enough for all. He feared the snake and the wild animal, which before had been docile to his love. What was the result? Instead of giving of its abundance gladly, he had to wrest its fruits from the earth. Instead of the luscious fruits and herbs of the garden, the earth gave him the product of his fear's thorns and thistles. Instead of friendship between him and the beasts of the forest, there was the natural fruit of fear, suspicion, and enmity. From the time he ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, man has reaped the fruits of fear. And as long as his belief in evil holds, he will continue to reap the fruits of fear. God is love. And what is the first characteristic of love? To give. God is constantly giving to us all that we will accept. But that is, alas, woefully little. The first characteristic of fear is to shut up every opening, whether of income or outgo. Fear repels. Fear holds on to what it has, lest it should be unable to get more. Fear takes only what it can grab. It will not open its doors and let good come in. It is too much afraid of evil. The result is that good comes to us through fear only after great struggle and suffering, even though the good is all the time trying to manifest itself. It is like a fortress built upon the highest peak of a great mountain. It is so fearful of evil coming to it that it has put itself as far as possible away from good as well. Love opens the petals of the flowers and the leaves of all growing things to the sun, giving freely of its fragrance and thereby draws to itself every element it needs for growth and fruition. Love asks, what have we in the house that will make others happy? And thereby attracting to itself everything necessary for its own happiness. What is the first and greatest commandment? To give out love, to make the world a happier place than you found it. Do that, and you cannot keep happiness from coming to you, too. I often wonder, says Andrew Chapman, why people do not make more of the marvelous power there is in kindness. It is the greatest lever to move the hearts of men that the world has ever known, greater by far than anything that mere ingenuity can devise, or subtlety suggest. Kindness is the kingpin of success in life. It is the prime factor in overcoming friction and making the human machinery run smoothly. If a man is your enemy, you cannot disarm him in any other way so surely as by doing him a kind act. The lady or the tiger in ancient times, It is said that there lived a king whose methods of administering justice was original in the extreme. He built a huge arena to seat himself and all his people. Under it, he put 2 doors. When a culprit was brought before him, accused of any crime, the king gave him his choice of which door he would open. If the accused man chose the right door, there came forth from it a beautiful lady, who was forthwith wed to him. But if he chose the wrong door, there came out of it a fierce and hungry tiger, which immediately tore him to pieces. The king had a beautiful daughter, and upon a time it came to pass that a handsome young courtier fell in love with her and she with him. That was a grievous crime, for it did not at all suit the king's plans that his daughter should marry a commoner, no matter how well favored he might be. So the poor suitor was promptly clapped into a cell and informed that on the morrow he must stand trial in the arena like any common culprit. The princess was heartbroken. She tried prayers, she tried tears, but her father was adamant. Any common man who dared lift his eyes to her deserved death, and death he should have death or marriage to someone in his own station. Failing to move her father, the princess tried the guards. But no amount of gold would persuade them to free her lover. This much she did accomplish, though she learned from which door the tiger would come, from which the lady. More, she learned who the lady was, and horror of horrors, it was one she had seen more than once casting amorous glances at her lover. The morning found her torn between love and jealousy. She could not see her lover killed before her eyes, and yet would it not be better to suffer that moment of agony, and be able to remember him as loving only her, than to see him day after day in the arms of another, second the triumph in that other's eyes, see his own eyes turn away from her to the beauty in his arms? As in a dream, she took her place on the dais at her father's right hand. As in a dream, she saw her lover step forth, saw him look to her for a sign, saw herself signal to him to choose the right-hand door, then hid her face so that she might see no more. Which had she chosen, the lady or the tiger? Which would you choose in like circumstances? Judging from the newspapers of the day, all too many, even in our so-called civilization, would choose the tiger. Why? Because they would rather see their lover dead than in the arms of another. Their idea of love is passion and self-gratification, and if they can't have their loved one for themselves, they don't want anyone else to have him, regardless of how he or the other may suffer. At some time and in one modified form or another, that choice of the lady or the tiger comes to most people, and your answer depends solely upon what kind of love yours is. If it is real love, you will not hesitate for a moment, for real love is selfless and free from all fear. And that is all jealousy is fear. Real love gets its happiness from giving. It lavishes itself upon the object of its affections without thought of return. And by its very prodigality, it brings back real love to itself. For love is a magnet. Like the magnet of iron which gives off electricity, by its very giving it draws to itself its own. And again, like the iron magnet, when its strength is done, when all power has gone out of it, it has only to rub against a stronger magnet to be renewed. What is it that makes men and women fall in love? Not beauty, that attracts attention. But love requires more than beauty. Love requires personality, charm, magnetism. And what is magnetism? What but the power you give out? It is vitality, it is abounding interest in people and things, it is love. You cannot be self-centered and still give out magnetism. You cannot think only of the gratification of your own desires and still expect to win or hold another's love. Love gives out a current of love, and all who come within its aura are attracted to it. Selfishness, jealousy, and hate are like layers of insulation around a magnet. They not only shut off all love from going out, but they keep any from getting in. A selfish man, a jealous man, an angry man, has no magnetism. He repels everyone he comes in contact with. He has shut off his own current and insulated himself against any from the outside. I remember reading a story of a man who had become involved in a serious lawsuit. He was bitter and resentful, for he felt that his opponents had been most unfair and unjust. But the suit was apparently going against him. He went to a teacher of the mental sciences and laid his case before him. The teacher told him he would never get anywhere with his case until he rid himself of his resentment and hatred. Bless your opponents, he advised. Know that in some way not yet apparent they are doing you a favor. Say to yourself, whenever thoughts of resentment creep, and I live by the law of love. And then try to do just that. The man tried it and found that he could not keep saying and using this affirmation without its affecting everything he did. There came a most unexpected opportunity to do a great favor for his opponents. Reluctantly he did it, and lo and behold, it opened the way to a fair settlement of the whole case, a settlement that proved eventually far more profitable to him than winning the case would have done. Doubt not, fear not, work on and wait. As sure as dawn shall conquer dark, so love will triumph over hate. So writes Douglas Malloch, and in a recent issue of Nautilus magazine, Sonia Shan tells of a love game which bears out the same idea. It is based, she says, on Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew. You remember, in the play, no matter what Catherine said or did, Petruchio acted as though she were falling in with his wishes, and the more contrary she became, the more he would praise her for her sweet submission to his every wish. Well, this game is as simple as that. No matter what happens during the time you are playing your game of love, you smile and say it is good and wonderful. Whether a feared bill collector comes blustering to your door, or the neighbor's children pull up your favorite flowers, or any one of the 100 annoying things that are part of your daily existence happen, just smile and give thanks for them as though they were great blessings instead of annoying trials. Release the feeling of love toward each and every annoying thing as though it were the best that ever happened to you. You will be amazed at the results that come from this little game, because in love, no matter how tiny the grain of it, there is unlimited power for good, and it is never wasted. You have heard the old adage that a soft answer turneth away wrath. This game has the same principle incorporated in it, with a lot more added to it. Non-resistance is one thing, but by itself it is negative. Add your praise and blessings to it, and you turn it into a positive force for good. To love all things is our natural heritage. It was what made Adam and Eve so happy in the Garden of Eden. The snake of fear crept into their hearts and turned them out of Eden, but we can each of us get back in if we will use the game of love. Try it. And while you are playing it, be sure to glorify yourself. See yourself as the perfect individual you always had hoped someday to become. Be the charming, gracious, noble self, who is raised by the powers of love to a level above all sordid, petty, annoying, and ugly things of life. Be that for 1 hour each day, and you will be amazed how quickly you will be that all day. You can use this love game in the home, in business, in whatever you are doing and wherever you are working. If you are a businessman, perhaps worried by a heavy load of debts and obligations, bless your creditors with the thought of abundance as you begin to accumulate the wherewithal to pay off your obligations. Keep the faith they had in you by including them in your prayer for increase. Begin to free yourself at once by doing all that is possible with the means you have, and as you proceed in this spirit the way will open for you to do more. Through the avenues of spirit, more means will come to you and every obligation will be met. If you are a creditor, be careful of the kind of thoughts you hold over your debtor. Avoid the thought that he is unwilling to pay you or that he is unable to pay you. One thought holds him to be dishonest and the other holds him to be subject to lack, and either of them tends to close the door to the possibility of his paying you soon. Declare abundant supply for both creditors and debtors, and thus help them to prosper. Pray and work for their good as well as for your own, for yours is inseparable from theirs. You owe your debtor quite as much as he owes you, and yours is a debt of love. Pay your debt to him and he will pay his to you. Take anything in your life that seems not to be going well, and give a few minutes each day to treating it. Remind yourself first that harmony and true success are the divine purposes of your life, that there are no exceptions to this law, therefore this particular difficulty must come under it. That being so, this thing that troubles you cannot be inharmonious or negative, once you know the truth about it. No, therefore, the truth must be that in some way this difficulty is working out for your good, that beneath its hard and ugly outer shell, there is a kernel of perfect good for you. So bless the good within. How does the kernel of the black walnut break its tough shell and send up a green shoot that presently grows into a great tree? By heating within. And that is the way you have to break the shell of every difficulty and trial that confronts you, by blessing the kernel of good you know to be within it, by praising and loving it until it expands and bursts its shell and springs forth as the fragrant plant of good for you. Praise, blessing, thanksgiving, love, these will solve any difficulty, tame any shrew of sickness or trouble. Start each day by saying, "This is the day which Jehovah hath made, I will rejoice and be glad in it." I thank God for abundant life, I thank God for enduring love. I thank God for joy, I thank God for glorious health, I thank God for infinite supply. I have awakened to a new day. I join the birds and all created things in glorious praise and thanksgiving. Lord, I do give you thanks for the abundance that is mine. If I have faltered more or less in my great task of happiness, if I have moved among my race and shown no glorious morning face, if beams from happy human eyes have moved me not, If morning skies, books and my food, and summer rain knocked on my sullen heart in vain, Lord, thy most pointed pleasure take and stab my spirit broad awake. Robert Louis Stevenson exercise for Chapter 13. Remember, in Vanity Fair, the owner of a fine estate who always carried acorns in his pocket, and when strolling about his grounds, if he came to a vacant spot, he would dig a little hole with his foot and drop an acorn into it. An acorn costs nothing, he was fond of saying, but it may spread into a prodigious bit of timber. The same is true of words of praise, of blessing. They cost nothing, but when planted in the waste places of human consciousness, they become tremendously productive for happiness. As Willa Howe expressed it, it's the little things we do and say that means so much as we go our way. A kindly deed can lift a load from weary shoulders on the road, or a gentle word, like summer rain, may soothe some hearts and banish pain. What joy or sadness often springs from just the simple, little things. Write it in your heart that each day is the best day of the year. There is no tomorrow, you know, there is no yesterday. There is only the eternal now. So make the most of your happiness now, while you can. You create your own environment, so only you are to blame if some existing situation seems unhappy. That being so, only you can rectify it. You must cure it in your own thought before it can be remedied anywhere else. Nothing is evil, but thinking makes it so. Instead of thinking unhappy thoughts, sickly thoughts, thoughts of poverty and lack, talk to the God in you about the good things you want. Start with what you have, and suggest to Him each day that you are getting stronger, healthier, richer, and happier. Talk to Him as to a rich and loving Father, describing the improvements you see in your affairs, the finer body you have in your mind's eye, the more important work you should be doing, the lovelier home, the richer rewards. Talk them over for 10 minutes each day when you are alone with Him. You will be amazed at how readily He will help you to carry out your suggestions. Don't worry about how He is to bring about the conditions you desire. Just talk to Him confidently, serenely, happily, and then leave the rest to Him. And for your prayers, here is an affirmation used by Unity which has been found unusually effective. My Father God, I place all my dependence in Thee, Thou giver of every good and perfect gift. Thou who art the source of my being art also the source of my supply. All that I shall ever need is in Thy mind for me, prepared for me from the beginning. Omnipresent substance, the garment with which Thou clothest Thy universe, with which Thou nourishest all Thy creation, is also mine to have and to use for my every desire and for the blessing of others of Thy children. I open myself fully through my faith in Thee, through my vision of Thy abundance, through my expectancy of its manifestation for me. I open my hands, my pocketbook, my wardrobe, my business, my bank account, and from Thy rich storehouse Thou dost fill every vessel that I hold out to Thee full to overflowing with Thine own omnipresent good and in Thine own good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over. I thank Thee, my Father God, that through the Christ in me I can touch Thine omnipresent substance and all my world be clothed with Thy opulence. I praise and give thanks that now and throughout eternity I am one with Thee and that in this union all Thine is mine and mine is Thine forever and ever. Throughout this book, we shall give you numbers of affirmations to use for different conditions. Don't try to use them all at once. Use one until it becomes so familiar that you find yourself repeating it too parrot-like. Then change to another. All are helpful. The mere statement I am good, I am strong, I am capable, is an upbuilding affirmation that tends to start your subconscious trying to bring about that condition in you, just as negative statements such as I am poor or sick tend to make those conditions true. So try to remember always to praise God in everything and every condition that confronts you. Praise Him and look for the divinity in each. Praise God that good is everywhere. Praise to the love we all may share, the life that thrills in you and me. Praise to the truth that sets us free.